Most people who get into racing, especially even NASCAR, they start off with karting and stuff when they're about, 6 to 8 years old or so. And then from there, just like any other motorsports, they start working their way up the different ranks. They go from there to Legends, to late models, to ARCA series, Truck series, and Xfinity series, and eventually Cup series. For me, I did not get that kind of start. I didn't have that kind of money when I was a kid. I did like cars and racing when I was a kid, but I just didn't have the funding. My parents didn't have it. Both of my parents are from Nigeria. They immigrated from Nigeria to the States back in the 80s. And in Nigeria, there isn't any type of racing at all, right? The only racing they do is foot racing. Motorsports wasn't a thing for them, but both of my parents came over here with a very hardworking type attitude. And coming over here to the States, their parents told them like, hey, when you go to America, it would be an absolute shame if you did not succeed. There's way too much opportunity here in the States. You must succeed no matter what. Even though they're coming over here with like not that much money at all, their parents knew that no matter what, you can still make it. Just grind and do everything you can do. My mom comes from a village in Nigeria where she had to fetch water at 12 years old just to help the family have extra water for cooking and cleaning. She had to climb up trees to pick fruits to go sell at markets, right? Like that's what she did to make extra money for the family at 12, not like at 20. So that's the kind of work ethic they came from. So when they came here to the US and settled in Dallas, Texas, my mom, she grinded to get her education and eventually become a nurse. She started some businesses, did all that. My dad got his education here in the States, got his undergrad. He worked in multimedia, so did a lot of multimedia, like video and audio visual kind of stuff for a lot of different schools and companies. That's kind of his realm. And then for us as kids growing up in Dallas, Texas, me and my brothers and my sister, we all gravitated towards sports. Me and my brothers, especially two of my brothers, we gravitated towards football because that's the biggest thing in Texas. Naturally, as I gravitated towards football, that was my big goal, is to go off and play college football, go play for a big team, play Division 1A. Like that was just my big goal and dream. But when I first started playing football in 7th grade, I really wasn't that good at all. Like I was terrible, actually. I was fast, but I was terrible. I couldn't catch a football to save my life. So I grinded and grinded and grinded to continue to kind of get better and better and better. And once I got to 9th grade, got a little bit better, finally made the A team in 9th grade, and then got to JV my sophomore year. Was a little bit better, then got to the varsity team junior year and so on. Just kept on grinding and working hard every single day and putting in extra effort outside of what normally everybody would do. While everybody else was worried about, hey, where's the next party? When's the next girl? When's the next whatever? For me, I was like, when's the next time I can work on my skills and crafts so I can get to my big goal, which is playing college football. Eventually, all the kids who weren't doing that didn't get recruited. And then I started getting letters from different schools. And one of those schools was the United States Naval Academy. So for me, I looked at it as a really good opportunity to go to a really good school, get a really good education, and then when I graduate, become an officer in the United States Navy. So, and then, obviously play football for a great team. So decided to take that offer, went to the Naval Academy, got there in 2006, played college football there all 4 years, played against a lot of really big teams, graduated in 2010 and became an officer in the Navy. Before I even graduated, that's when I really started kind of growing this passion for cars and racing. During the off seasons and stuff, when I would have a little bit more time because we weren't practicing every day, we were only doing our workouts, YouTube was still kind of fairly new. So I would go on YouTube and any questions I had about cars, I would just type it in and try to learn, like, okay, what's an LSD? What are these kind of motors? What's a turbocharger? What's a supercharger? What's boost? All that stuff. I was just typing those questions on Google and on YouTube. And then eventually I found Top Gear. So I was like, oh, this is a cool show and they have a lot of cool sports cars. Maybe I can learn from that. So then every day I'd watch a new episode of Top Gear on YouTube or the clips that we at least have on there. Over time, like any questions I would ever have, I'd once again go research. Like Jeremy Clarkson would be like, oh, this car has a blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, oh, what's that? And I'd go research it. I naturally just started gravitating more and more towards cars. Like I was like, man, this is so cool. It's so fascinating. In college, I didn't have money to buy a really cool sports car. But when I graduated and I became an officer in the Navy, I finally started making some money. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can actually buy like the sports car, muscle car, whatever, like that I wanted to buy. At that time, that was 2010. So the Dodge Challenger SRT8s were very new at that time. So I bought a 2009 SRT8. I remember I bought it on a Monday. I just graduated college, by the way. Like I was 30 days from after graduation. Bought it on a Monday, and then that Friday I had it at a drag strip. And I was like, let me go see what this car can do stock. And I think I did like a 13.7 on street tires, right? And at that time, that was the fastest I ever gone in a quarter mile. So I was like, this is so cool. But I was like, it's not fast enough. I want to get faster. I want to do more. After that, like over the next few months, I got a big cam in there. And then eventually I got a supercharger. Just kept on doing all little kind of just performance mods that I could, bolt on stuff to get it a little bit faster. Finally got it about 2 seconds faster, got it into the 11-second club. But I was like, that's still not enough. I need to get down to the 10s and maybe the 9s or something. And at that time, if you're in the 10s, you're like big balling, right? So I bought a bigger supercharger and built the motor and did all that stuff. But that's all money that I had saved up from a deployment I did in 2012. So I went on deployment for 10 months. I think I saved like 50 grand, spent some of it on paying off other bills and other things like that. And then any extra money I had, I just put it into the car. And like a lot of people will look at me like crazy, like, oh my gosh, that's like not financially smart at all. You like saved all this money and you spent most of it on your car. And I'm like, well, that's what led me towards racing in NASCAR and also becoming an entrepreneur and everything else I did. Because I put money into my passion, it led me towards my other bigger passions. In 2013, I did the Mojave Mile. I did 200.9 miles per hour with that car, which at that time I was like the third or fourth person to ever go 200 miles per hour in a Challenger SRT8. And I was a second person to do it and not blow up. That was huge for me. Big deal. Got me in a bunch of magazines and all that stuff. And then after that, I was like, man, I really like going fast in a straight line, but I'd like to learn how to go fast around corners. Late 2013, I bought a C6 Z06, and it was meant to be like a daily, and then maybe I'll go to a few track days with it, but nothing crazy. Well, that quickly changed. I bought it, and once again, within like the first 2 or 3 weeks, I went to a road course track, did my first track day, and I fell in love with like going fast around corners. I'm like, this is so cool. Let me learn how to do it better. So I kept on doing it more and more and more. Like every 2 weeks, I was going to do these track days. It was maybe a few months after I bought the car. It was like in January of 2014. I was sitting in my room one night, and I was thinking like, what's the next big thing for me? Because at that time I was still active duty in the Navy. So what's the next big thing? Like, where can I take this whole passion for cars and racing? I've never been the type of person to just keep it at an amateur level. Why not take it to the highest level possible? So I was sitting in my room and I had a whiteboard on my wall, and I pulled it off, and I usually wrote like goals on there. I erased whatever was on there and just wrote one big goal: become a professional race car driver. This is January 2014. I had no clue where to go. I've never raced in real life. I'd only done some track days, all that, but I never like wheel to wheel race. But I wrote it down, and because I wrote it down and because I was about to put intentional energy towards that every single day for the rest of my life, because I was willing to do that is why everything started coming together. It's crazy how once you like make a decision on something and you're like intentional about it, like I'm going to figure out how to do it no matter what roadblocks I hit. It's crazy how things start falling in line. All of a sudden your path that you start going, and it's going to be a long path, people start coming into that path that start helping show you the way. Doors start opening, doors start closing. People that you were with before sometimes get left behind. All these things start happening. But once again, you got to keep your mind on the mission, and no matter what, keep grinding no matter what happens. You're going to go through a lot of dark days, good days, bad days, a lot of times more bad days than good. But because you're willing to stay strong enough, long enough, life will reward you in the end. And that's what I learned. So even though I had no clue where to go or what to do, I did know that I was a resourceful person. So I started researching. I literally went on Google and I was like, how to become a professional race car driver. And everything I was met with was negativity. Everybody on the forums were like, you can't do it because you didn't come from racing. You didn't come from a rich family. You're African American, you're black. Black people don't race, right? Like all this stuff I was seeing online, I'm like, what the heck? But I wasn't gonna let other people's opinion of me and the journey that I was about to take, I wasn't gonna let their opinion of me become my reality. I knew that like God had put a vision in my head that I was supposed to become something. Like the deal is already done in the future. All I have to do now is no matter what, don't quit. Just keep marching forward, no matter how difficult it is. Whatever wall I get to, either jump over it, climb over it, go under it, go around it, or go through it. But like, no matter what the pain is, just keep on moving. And that's what I had to do. So I started doing my research, started connecting with people, going to races, meeting people and networking. Went to a car show and met a guy's name is Kyle Wisner. and he was with the SRT experience doing like ride-alongs and all that stuff. And I told him about kind of my goals. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this streetcar thing, going to track days, but I'm really trying to get into racing and all that stuff. We're just talking. I didn't think anything of it. We part ways. And then I needed to use the restroom maybe like a few hours later. So I went to the porta potties, and there was a bunch of them. Happened to just stand in line for this one. There's a lot of people there. I'm waiting. I get up there to the front, and then he was actually in there, and he came out, and we saw each other again. I'm like, oh, hey, I saw you, just like, an hour or two ago or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, dude, for whatever reason, I was meaning to go find you again. Like, I just was thinking about something. I don't know why it hit me, but like everything you're saying you're doing, like doing these track days and stuff, like for whatever reason, I think like you have much more that you can do in life. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know, but like you should come test a stock car. I was like, wait, what? Like NASCAR stuff? He's like, yeah, like a late model, not like Cup Series, but like a late model. I'm like, okay, I would love to test it. So he's like, okay, let me connect you with my team, and then we'll get it figured out. But the team I run with, like, I think you could come test, and maybe you'll be good, and who knows, maybe you'll turn into something. I was like, okay, let's do it. He connected me with the team. I did the test 2 months later. It went well. For a guy who's never done it before, it went well. And then from there, the team was like, hey, the very next year, you can come run with us. It's just only gonna cost you $5,000 per race. I was like, oh crap. I'm like, I make like $6,000 a month take home. Like, how am I gonna pay $5,000 every other week to race? So I was like, oh crap. So I was going on deployment, thank God. So I went on deployment for about 5 months. During that time, it gave me a lot of free time to think through, what do I need to do? What's it gonna take to find the funding to make this happen? I have a friend who was on the ship, Ryan Hogan, and he's an entrepreneurial type guy, and he gave me the idea of, you should start your own business, use that to make the money you need to do to go after your other passions and goals. And then that's what led me towards starting my first business, which was hosting drag racing events. So I was like, oh my God, like if I host these drag racing events, maybe I can make some extra profit. I'll use that to pay for my racing. Well, the events I was gonna put on, I wasn't putting them on like every week, right? So it's gonna be like 3 in a year. Those 3 will make enough money to pay for some of my racing, but it's spread out. I gotta find money in between that to get to some of these other races. So I did crowdfunding campaigns, made some money on that, used it to race, used my credit cards, maxed it out just to go racing. It got to a point in June of 2015, after I did my first few late model races, it got to a point where I ran out of money, literally ran out of money. I had like no money in my bank account. I mean, I was still getting paid by the Navy being active duty. So, I knew I was gonna get a check every 2 weeks, but like that's enough to cover my bills and like live a normal life, not go racing. So I was like at the point where most people would quit. We're like, at this point, you can't keep going, Jesse. Like, you literally don't have the money to keep going. Yet there was not a single thing in my mind that said quit. All my mind kept saying was, you have nothing, just keep going. So then I just got on the phone and started calling people, connected with my old PR guy from the Naval Academy. I hit him up and like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm grinding. And like, man, if you can just connect me with anybody you know that just you think might be of help. I got to network with people. And he connected me with a family who had a lot of money. And next thing you know, I connected with this gentleman, and they have a big company, they make a lot of money, done really well in business. The guy actually used to own a NASCAR team back in the day, and he really loved my story. And I had a lunch with him. I just sat down at lunch and explained everything. I didn't even ask him for any money. I just said, look, here's my story, this is what I'm doing. I just want to at least give you that information, and whatever you can think of from there is what you can think of. Whether you connect me to somebody or whatever, but I just want to get my story to you. And then he asked me, how much money do you need to finish out the rest of your season? And I was like, at that time it was like 45 grand or something like that. I was like, I think it's gonna be like 45 grand. He's like, I'm gonna make a deal happen for you. And he figured out this very interesting way to put together a sponsorship, and it covered the rest of my year, which bought me time to build up my business so that in the second year, I had the money to actually support myself and keep it going. So going into the second year, when I moved up to the next level in NASCAR, which was the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West, I actually had money to actually support most of my season. I still got like 85% of that season was covered by me. The other 15% was a little bit of sponsorship, but it worked. And I think I ended up finishing like 10th in the standings for that year, which for me was incredible, right? I was a guy who not much experience, didn't know what I was doing, wasn't the fastest, but had some decent races, had some terrible races, but kept on grinding through, made it through the whole season. There's other guys who had a lot more money than me that didn't make it through the season, and I just kept grinding and we made it there. And just kept on with that formula each year. Eventually got to a point, I think around 2017, 2018, when I was jumping into higher levels, going into ARCA and then the truck series and so on, where the money I was making for my businesses was good, but it wasn't enough to support me in that level of racing. And then from there, I needed sponsorship. And that's when I linked up with my agent, Matt Casto, who's a amazing marketing mind. And he took my story of going from Navy to NASCAR. He knew how powerful and inspirational it was, that he could connect this and leverage this with different businesses who were very military friendly or needed somebody who could present the messages and the initiatives and the marketing stuff that they wanted, like the way I could. And he made these connections. And next thing you know, we started finding sponsorship deals, smaller ones to start, bigger ones as time went on. And next thing you know, we're moving up the ranks, and now we own our own NASCAR team with Emmett Smith. So it's been an incredible journey. Definitely not an easy one at all. Good days and bad days, like I said. Once again, I'm not the best racer out there, right? I have some good days and I have some terrible days. My story is about just being able to grind through it no matter what. No matter what anyone says, if you see yourself becoming something, you just go after it, And yeah, you could be at the top. You could end up being the best in the world, or you just be mediocre or whatever. But as long as you go after it, you achieve it, you're fulfilling something, so that when you're sitting on your deathbed one day, when you're 80, 85, 90, 100, whatever, you look back on life and you're like, I went after everything no matter what. And that's what I want to make sure I feel like at the end of my life.
Finding good quality used cars is harder today than it ever has been, and the best way to find one is by using Auto Tempest. Auto Tempest is where I start most of my days searching for my next car, because they compile the results from all the major sites into one place. They support VINwiki, they support CarTrek, and we love them for that, but honestly I love it because it's the best way to find your next car. They've even got an app now, so download it, check it out, and have the power of Auto Tempest on your phone.